Welcome back to a new video. So today I wanted to talk about something that I wrote a blog post on it, and it was originally just going to be a blog post, but as I was writing it I was like, no, because I really want people to understand this. And basically, I mean, you can probably tell from the title, but I want to talk about masks today and how specifically normal able-bodied people refusing to wear them really negatively impacts the disabled community. So as I said, I did do a blog post on this, so if you want to read it instead of listen to it, you can go and read that. It's on my blog, photography.samanthadrage.co.uk. I'll put it in the link in the description, so you can go and follow the link if you want to. So, I mean, the obvious first thing that comes to mind when you think of how, you know, normal able-bodied people refusing to wear masks could impact the disabled community is that the chances are we're more likely to be at risk of the virus than normal abled people. But that's not really what I wanted to talk about, because I mean, I feel like that's quite obvious, you know, and we should be wearing masks anyway. But what I really wanted to talk about is that some people, including myself, are exempt from wearing masks for one reason or another. So according to the guidelines in England at least are that there's an exception to say that anyone with a disability that means they cannot put on, wear or remove face coverings is exempt from wearing one. So you're probably thinking, well, why does that include me? Because, you know, I'm not confined to a wheelchair, like I have all my limbs, and, you know, I look outwardly like a normal person. I don't look disabled. So to explain that, I think I should probably go over exactly what my disabilities are in case you haven't watched any of my other videos. So I'm autistic. That's sort of my main disability, I guess, out of the many that I have. I also have Tourette's syndrome. There is kindly demonstrating itself. I also suffer with several mental health issues, and we're in the process of getting several other diagnoses as well. So the specific disability that prevents me from wearing a mask is the autism. Now, that might not make a lot of sense, but that's why I wanted to make the video and the blog post to explain it. Because while, on the one hand, you know, I shouldn't have to explain myself, I am exempt, and I know that for a fact. I know I'm right, and I shouldn't have to explain myself to anyone. But the fact of the matter is that most people are not aware of invisible disabilities. You know, their perception of autism is based on the very incorrect and very damaging stereotype, and because I'm not a loud little boy, I therefore can apparently not be autistic. So, you know, it sucks that these sorts of stereotypes exist, and I shouldn't have to justify myself, but I think that as much as, you know, I shouldn't have to justify myself because I know I'm in the right and you're in the wrong, I also feel like we're not going to get anywhere unless we explain ourselves. So hopefully this video will help educate some people. So why is it that I am exempt from wearing a mask? Well, the reason is that wearing a mask causes me extreme discomfort, which therefore results in meltdowns and being unable to function. So, now, a lot of people argue that, oh, well, it's uncomfortable for everyone to wear, and yeah, I agree, you don't have to like them, they are uncomfortable. However, the difference is that you, a normal neurotypical person, might find it a little bit irritating, but me, wearing a mask will mean that all of my senses are completely overloaded and I will have a meltdown within the matter of minutes. So, in case you don't know, a big part of autism is sensory overload. So basically all of my senses are kind of heightened in a way. I hear everything and it becomes very overwhelming. So I don't like loud noises, bright lights, flickery lights. You know, I don't like people touching me on any account, and so all of these little things add up. So then when you add the mask to the mix, so bear in mind, because the places where you need to wear a mask are places like public transport, which is already an incredibly stressful environment for me because you're often pushed up against lots of people are touching you, people will like wear perfumes and deodorants and they're so overwhelming. You might have the smell of, I don't know, the cleaner they used on the bus, and you know, then you've got all the sound of people talking, and on their phone you've got the sound of the bus. And so do you see how that can get a lot? And then you add the fact that there's this piece of fabric over my face that is unknown to me, it's alien, I'm not used to it, and it makes me feel like I'm suffocating a little bit. So now, I've seen this, there's been a lot of talk about this online, about how, you know, people are like, oh, I can't breathe, and, you know, a lot of doctors have then debunked this myth, and is that the right word? You know what I mean? By showing like the oxygen levels, and it's true, the masks do not limit your oxygen supply, and I know this logically. However, for people with autism like myself, it doesn't matter what we know logically, it matters what we feel. And so even though I know that, you know, this mask is not obstructing my access to oxygen, I know that, the point is it feels like I can't breathe. And so add that to the fact that I've got all of these other noises and sensory things going on, and it triggers a meltdown 10 times quicker than I would normally melt down. I think trying to explain an autistic meltdown is incredibly difficult, because really, like, the best time I can describe it is when I'm having a meltdown, except I obviously then can't describe it because I'm having a meltdown. But it really is, just imagine like every single little thing is so loud and everything's so close and like distorted, and it's horrible. And so like, you don't want to experience one. You know, I'm 17, I've been dealing with this shit for 17 years, so I know what does and doesn't trigger a meltdown, and so I do my best to avoid it at all costs. And, you know, I take steps to make sure that, you know, I have a twiddle. I'll show you actually. So this is my twiddle. I don't know if that's actually what it's called, but it's what I call it. We got it off of a website, I think, it's like designed, it's got loads of toys for autistic kids and just any kid with a disability really. So it's just like a chain, and you can play with it, it makes like a nice noise, and you can like wrap it around. And so this is my favourite toy. So this is what I use, I bring it everywhere, and that helps. It gives me something to do with my hands, gives me something to focus on, and also it's quite, like, it's hard enough that I can squeeze it so that I can feel it, which sort of grounds me, but it's also not hard enough that it's gonna hurt me, so I like that. So, you know, I have all these things that help me prevent meltdowns, except, you know, this mask, I've never had to wear a mask before, and it's so uncomfortable for me that it triggers a meltdown. So how does that tie into normal abled people not wearing masks? Well, I am someone who is exempt from wearing a mask for the reasons I've just told you. However, I do not look disabled. I should put this down. You know, as I said earlier, I'm not confined to a wheelchair, I don't have missing limbs, you know, I look like a normal person, whatever that is. You know, and I speak fairly eloquently, and I'm always perceived as older than I am. You know, people usually assume I'm sort of in my mid-20s because I talk very eloquently, I act older than my age, I'm very emotionally mature, and so people assume I'm older than I am. But that also means that they assume that, oh, well, you know, she's very polite and well-spoken, and so she clearly must just be a normal person, right? But no, I'm not a normal person. Now, my Tourette's specifically is something that's rather hard to hide, because I can't control it most of the time. However, as I said, I've had 17 years of practice, so I'm pretty good at suppressing it and just ignoring everything. Because, you know, if I'm in a stressful situation, if I'm trying to talk to someone, or if I'm on like public transport or something, and then all I'm thinking about is I need to get to that destination. So, you know, I'm very good at suppressing it and just ignoring all the panic I'm feeling so that I can get to that destination, and then once I'm there, then I can have a meltdown, because it's much better to have a meltdown, you know, in like a quiet Starbucks than it is on a bus. And so because I do not look disabled in any way, shape or form, it causes a lot of issues for me. Because if everyone who needed to wear a mask, and everyone who wasn't exempt basically, which is most people, if everyone just wore their mask, then I wouldn't be questioned, because they'd go, oh well, she's not wearing a mask, so clearly she's exempt, and they wouldn't feel the need to question that. However, so many people refuse to wear them for stupid reasons, and, you know, they're not valid reasons. And so, you know, I understand that they might be a little bit uncomfortable, but think about how much more uncomfortable I am. You know, you refusing to not wear a mask puts me in a situation where I am forced to, which then puts me in the situation that I've just described to you, which is extreme meltdown, which is horrible, and I don't think anyone wants to experience that, but, you know, people refusing to wear masks put me in that situation. So, you're probably wondering, well, you know, Sam, if it causes you so much discomfort, why do you not fight more for your right to not wear one? Because it is my right, I do not have to wear one. I am someone who is exempt because it would cause me an extreme issue if I wore it. Now, this is a very complicated reason, and this isn't sort of like, this can't be fixed by people just not wearing masks, because at the end of the day, the point is I still don't look disabled. And so even if everyone else did wear masks, and so therefore the natural assumption would be that if someone wasn't wearing a mask, then they would be exempt. The point is, I do not look disabled, I do not act disabled, and so there are some people who would still question me. And this is rooted in a history of ableism, and this isn't going to be fixed by just people wearing masks. However, I will try and explain. So, I will use my recent trip to the Apple Store as a good example to this. So if you watch the vlogs, then you'll know I recently bought an iPad Pro, and the reason, I mean, you can order it online, however I'm a student and so I have a student card, which means I can get a student discount, but you need to go in to the store to get the student discount. And so, you know, so I was like weighing up, well, you know, and because we looked on the website and we know that you have to wear the masks, and so like we knew it would be an issue, and so I have all of my diagnosis. I could have bought my diagnosis for autism and Tourette's, and, you know, we could have bought the thing that exempts me from wearing a mask, and we could have bought all of that, but the chances is that 9 times out of 10 we're still going to be told, no, you have to wear a mask or you can go home, even if we show them all the evidence, because I don't look disabled. And so I had to sort of weigh up whether, you know, I wanted to spend an extra like £200 by ordering online, or whether I wanted to sort of take the risk and go and suffer for a while, well, more than a while, for several days really, because it, like, everything has a repercussion for days, even weeks sometimes. But in the end I chose that, because the iPad Pro is so expensive, I decided, you know what, I think it's worth it to go in to get like the £200 discount, even if I have to suffer for it. So we went in. Our city centre doesn't require that you wear masks, but certain stores do. And we knew that the Apple Store was one of them. So technically, as I said, we could have bought all the documents, we could have found the thing that exempts me from wearing a mask, and we could have argued with them. However, the common response to this is either that they will just keep arguing with you, and it, like, some people, they just do not understand. And to be fair, it's not entirely their fault. You know, they've been raised in a very ableist society. Most of them are just doing their jobs, and I understand that. However, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't minimise the problem. A lot of people, you can argue with them for hours, and you just go round and round in circles, and they're not listening to them, and you won't get through to them. Some people just, they don't care, they won't listen, and they don't understand. And of course, you know, you don't know if you're going to be in that situation until you get there, because you don't know who's going to be on the door, you don't know how reasonable they're going to be or what background they have, and so it really is just hit and miss. And then the other quite common thing is that you will get the whole "it's store policy" line, and yes, it is store policy for everyone to wear a mask who is not exempt, like me. But then they go, oh well, like, because I don't look disabled, they just, even if I present them with the documents, because they don't understand the reason behind why I'm exempt, they don't believe me and they don't care. And I think a lot of that stems from the fact that people don't understand autism. So they view it as just if, oh, you know, like if I just bought a diagnosis for anxiety, because that wouldn't exempt you. But autism is actually very different, and that stems from the fact that there's just not enough education about disabilities and autism, which, to be fair, is not their fault. However, it does make my life a lot harder. So I weighed those options as well, and in the end I decided I could not be bothered to argue with people, because I knew we'd get argued with, especially at the Apple Store. If it was something like, Primark, I probably would have just bought something because they're not going to be too nitpicky, but a really established sort of very professional company like Apple wasn't going to budge, and I knew that. So I decided, you know what, it's more effort for me to spend 40 minutes arguing with the guy at the door and proving that I'm disabled and everything else, and I couldn't be bothered with it. So I was like, no, you know what, because, you know, we knew what we were going to get, so it was just going to be walk in, I want this, he goes and get the thing, and then we pay and then we leave. It was 10 minutes in and out, and trust me, I still suffered for it, but I weighed the options and I decided that the meltdown was less effort and pain than the arguing. And I think that should give you some sort of idea about just how much effort it is to argue with people, because I shouldn't have to argue with people. I shouldn't have to validate and prove why I'm exempt for anything. You know, they should just say, oh yeah, that's fine, you know, but that's not the case, and I'm not sure it'll ever be the case in my lifetime at least. So instead I just chose to wear the mask, and I hated every minute of it, and I didn't do much else for the rest of the day because I was so exhausted from trying to keep myself together whilst I was wearing it. So, because the thing is, I didn't have a full-on meltdown in the Apple store. However, that was because of some very specific circumstances. So let me explain this, because you're probably thinking, oh, we didn't have a meltdown, so it's fine. But no, it's not. So the Apple store, first of all, it was empty. It was just me, my mum, and the guy who was serving us. So it was completely empty apart from us and the guy that brought my iPad down the stairs. So there was no one else there, and the city centre was pretty much empty anyway because most people are still wanting to stay in their houses. So it wasn't, like, there wasn't as much background noise as there usually is. There wasn't people bustling around. I didn't have to worry about people walking into me or whether I was in anyone's way, because it was just us. So that took a big chunk out of what I had to process. Also, the Apple store in particular is a really nice store for us autistics because it's so minimalist in its design. It's very white, and so it makes it seem bigger. And also, like, there's not just stuff cluttering it up. It's just counters on either side, big table in the middle, and like a product evenly spaced out, and that's it. It's so minimalist, which removes then a lot of the visual input as well. And so I think because of the fact that it was pretty quiet, it was empty, it looks really big, and it's very minimalist, means that it took so much away from the usual surroundings I'd have to deal with. And so it meant that I could deal a little bit better with trying to have a conversation with this guy, and also having to wear the mask. I also knew that I was with my mum, and so if everything did go terribly, I knew that she knew exactly what she was doing and she'd get it done. Whereas if I was alone, there would have been more repercussions, because I knew that I had to keep my head so that I could, like, talk to the guy and finish the interaction and then get home. Whereas I was with my mum, so she can finish it off and then drive me home, and it's not a problem. So that there's all these little factors, and every single tiny little thing adds up. So yes, I didn't have a meltdown in the middle of the Apple store, but having to wear the mask did have repercussions. I spent the rest of the day doing not much at all. I mean, I fiddled with my iPad a little bit, but mostly I just sat in bed and scrolled through my phone because I was exhausted, and it has had repercussions even until last week, which is a week and a half later. So it does have repercussions, even though I didn't even have a full-on meltdown. So can you imagine the repercussions if I had? And that is, I think, what people don't understand. And I don't blame people for not understanding, because they're not taught it. Like, it's not taught in schools, and I think it should be. But also I think, you know, the time has come that, no, it's not taught in schools, but people need to take the responsibility for educating themselves on this sort of thing. So the last two things I wanted to talk about before I go was, I quickly wanted to mention just how much more difficult actually it is having other people wear masks as someone autistic. This isn't directly linked to what I was just talking about, but I wanted to mention it because it's not really a big enough topic to do on its own, but I wanted to mention it because I think it's important. When you're autistic, like, people tend to struggle with processing things, And so often if you say something to me, it'll take me like 2 or 3 more seconds than like a normal person would to process what you've said and therefore form an answer. And so a lot of people assume that I'm just slow or stupid or I haven't heard them. And oftentimes I'm definitely one of those people who you'll say something to me and I'll go, huh? And then I'll answer immediately because I heard you. I just needed a minute to process it. However, with the masks on, obviously I can't see people's mouths or faces, I can't see their facial expressions, and so it blocks out a lot of the stuff that I use to process things. This is the same on things like video chats and stuff. I might do a separate video on this, I don't know, but basically when people are wearing masks, it's 10 times harder for me to tell what they're saying because I can't see their mouth moving, I can't see their facial expressions very well, and I mean, I'm not great at reading facial expressions and body language anyway, because that's another part of being autistic, but what little I can read is essential to understanding what you're saying. And so when you've got the mask on, it makes it very difficult for me. Which is, of course, then another thing I have to contend with when I'm out and about, because even though I'm exempt from wearing a mask, the people serving me are not. And so they're wearing masks, which is good, they should be wearing masks, but it makes it harder for me to communicate with them, which is another thing I have to think about. So yeah, I just thought that was worth mentioning. I may do another video on this, because I think I actually probably could make a video. Let me know if you want me to talk about how, you know, sensory processing and how much longer it takes me to process what you're saying, and you know how I do that and why I can't like video chat and stuff, because I'm happy to do a video on it. But yeah, the last thing I wanted to mention was that, you know, this sort of issue with normal able-bodied people not wearing masks and therefore actual disabled people who don't look disabled having the repercussions of it is not just for the masks. You can see it in so many other things. The most common one is disabled parking spaces. I mean, if you're not disabled, don't park in our spaces, because first of all, you've got a whole rest of the car park. We've only got like 3 spaces to choose from, so don't park in our spaces. You know, don't be a dick. This also applies to things like disabled toilets, and fidget spinners is actually a pretty good example because obviously they became a trend a few years ago. They were originally designed with autistics in mind, and I think people with ADHD use them as well. And yet they're now banned in so many places because they became a trend and people misuse them. So, you know, basically just try and think about the thing you're using and whether it's actually made for you, and if it's, you know, if it's made for people who specifically have disabilities or something, then don't use it, because it can have a really big negative impact on people with disabilities. And you know, there's actually 1.3 billion people on the planet with disabilities. That's a lot of people, because there's 7 billion people, maybe almost 8 billion at this point, on the planet, and 1.3 billion of us have disabilities. That's a lot of people. So, you know, really just think about it, because it does have a huge impact. So yeah, I'm gonna go now because I think I've made my point, but please just try and think about what you're doing and, you know, maybe try and educate yourself. I know the schools don't educate you on this, and most parents probably don't know either. So, you know, it's not your fault, but I think the time has come that you need to take responsibility for educating yourself. So please try. I will try and leave some sources down below, but I mean, this channel is probably a good source because, you know, its own voices. I am autistic, I have Tourette's, mental health, so many other things, and there's more things to come as well because we're getting more diagnoses. I don't know how you say that. So, you know, this is, you know, try and like support own voices people. I know Molly Burke, she is a great YouTuber to follow. She's blind, and yet she has this amazing YouTube channel. She does a lot of sort of like debunking blind myths, and then she also just has a great personality. She's got an adorable guide dog, she's got a new kitten, like she has crazy coloured hair, she loves fashion, so she's also like a normal, well-rounded person. So, you know, please go and follow her. I will try and leave some other people down below, especially on Instagram. I've got quite a few people to recommend on Instagram. So, you know, just try and follow people who are disabled and speaking out. And yeah, just try and educate yourself. So yeah, I'm gonna leave this here. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe for more. Also, can you please share this video as well so that other people can, you know, hear what I have to say, because it is really important. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.